Hello guys and girls, welcome back to another episode on the Falcon YouTube channel. Right guys, so before we get into the sit down, I want to give you a bit of context here. So when I first started this project, the core mission was to help inspire, guide, educate and evolve as many traders all around the world. This is why we do these things. This is why we do these sit downs. Any opportunity that we get a meetup, so we just recently had our Amsterdam meetup, we actually filmed it there, and we have an opportunity to sit down with our students and hear the impact. It's so inspiring, not just for us, but people in the community and traders as a whole. So you can see what they're going through, how they're breaking through and things like that. We recently had our meetup in Australia, so we're going all around the world. First time in Amsterdam, I'm sure it's going to be the first of many. I really hope you enjoyed this particular sit down. I really enjoyed spending time with Rick, getting to know him on more of a personal level and seeing the impact that Falcon is making for him. He's on his own journey. He's such an educated guy and he's really, really focused. I know you're going to take tons of value away from this particular sit down. Guys and girls, let's get into it. So we're back with another student sit down. Very, very excited for this one, as we've literally just had our first ever Amsterdam meetup as well. And joined with me today, which I'm really excited about, Rick. Absolute pleasure to have you here. Been really looking forward to this one, and we're going to be talking over some really, really interesting topics about that. I think that it's not really spoken about that much in trading, is it? And I know you've got some interesting questions that we're going to dive into. So yeah, Rick, before we get into the kind of the student sit down side of things, how's your sort of journey been so far in trading? How long have you been trading now?
I've been trading a total of 3 years, but you made a video I think like a half year ago, where you said like, don't say you've been trading for 3 years. So by that standard, I've actually been trading like for 3/4 of a year.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of hiatus, like a break, contemplation times. So more or less a year, I guess.
Okay, good. Yeah. The reason why we do that, guys and girls, is because there's been people that have been trading. They'll say they've been trading for 5 years, 10 years, things like that. But how long have you actually been focused? Because then otherwise you put too much pressure to feel like it should have already happened right now.
Exactly, and you feel like, oh, if I say I've been trading for 5 years, it's a cool statement. Mm-hmm. But then the next question follows, are you successful? And you're like, nah, I shouldn't have said 5 years.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So it's rather stay humble. And for me, it's been a lot of moments of reflection also, where I withdrew from trading. Mm-hmm. And noticed that there is something I need to think about or solve before I can enter back into the markets. Mm-hmm. There is a quote from a Drake song, actually. It's not so deep, but the quote is, I started analyzing the charts and started analyzing myself. Mm-hmm. And that really spoke to me, because I noticed in the beginning, at least, first 1-2 years, I was analyzing the charts like crazy, mm-hmm. but ignoring my own mind, my own head. So that was... that's actually the direction I would like to take.
Is that what you're working on right now, more focusing on yourself?
I would say most of the energy goes in that mm-hmm. direction. Because I see it as a highest leverage or the best return for energy input, mm-hmm. If one looks into the areas of 1% tweaks, you always say that. I was about to ask you earlier, like, what is your recent 1% tweak? Because it gives you an indication of what someone is working on right now. And I think these 1% tweaks shouldn't only be in one niche.
I agree.
Like you can say, I'm only working on 1% tweaks within backtesting. Mm-hmm. What's with all the other areas? There's a lot of other areas that deserve growth, and that could have a leverage effect on trading as a whole, or your profitability, that maybe aren't even in the trading space.
Of course.
So that's what fascinates me recently, and I would say in the last year I spent considerable amount of energy focusing on this area. Mm-hmm. I've been critiqued for it, but we had a conversation earlier, I don't think that you are an opponent to that idea of spending time analyzing yourself, or how would you say?
When it comes to analysing myself, I think self-awareness is a big key, right? So that's where I kind of take it in that direction. And when you alluded to the 1% tweaks, for me right now, 1% tweaks is about processes, right? But I think it's important to recognize one discipline affects another. Like you said, other areas of your life, they deserve the attention. I notice straight away if something is affecting something, so if I'm not focusing on something else, I'm self-aware to realize, hold on, I pull myself up on it really quickly. And it could be something like, it's not too drastic, like 2 or 3 days or a week or something like that. And then I quickly fix that and go back to, right, this is the process, this is the recipe that I need to follow. So anytime I deviate, if I go off track just a little bit, I'm self-aware now enough to focus on that. So I'm more fascinated by that right now, to be fully self-aware, because we've spoken about this before, you know, things like ego. You could be very, very self-aware, let the ego take over, and then you're no longer self-aware. So I'm very, very critical in that sense to analyze how self-aware have I been, almost like analyzing my self-awareness in that sense. I find that that's the place that I'm at right now, and I'm most
inception of awareness.
yeah, it is. It really, you're almost like looking at yourself from a different point of view.
Yeah.
And how have you sort of found that yourself, self-awareness? Is that something you struggled with, or?
It's quite the opposite, actually. I at some point, I don't know what kicked off the journey of reflection, but it's been rather a problem of too much self-reflection, because by psychological standards, someone is too reflected can start creating problems for themselves, because they are too reflected, they are too focused on analyzing themselves. But so this has been a long journey for me, and just recently, just in the last 2-3 years, I stopped punishing myself for things I've been reflecting on, and more utilizing that skill of preferring a walk by yourself through the park over sitting, you know, with friends for beers.
Yeah, yeah.
Now it's becoming effective and actually helping.
Do you feel like you're taking care of yourself more?
Yes, I would say so. I would say it's starting to really return, like the investment gets a return faster. You know, some people, they analyze and they're reflective, or they're starting to become self-aware, more and more self-aware, but they don't really see the benefit. And I think in the beginning it just takes a long time.
Of course.
Have you seen that for yourself, like the journey of self-awareness and growth? Did that kick off later on?
Oh, 100%. You know, I almost can't imagine not being self-aware now, because once you get the self-awareness, it's like you become the person where you're really able to be vulnerable. Right? Vulnerability is the key thing. You're able to be vulnerable enough to realize, yeah, I wasn't. You find it easy to almost have a positive critique. So for example, when I alluded to earlier, going into the areas of, right, if I haven't got my processes on point, I won't be upset or really get down about it. I'll just be self-aware enough, be like, oh, I just need to fix that.
It's exciting, actually.
Yeah, it is, because you can, in those moments, realize something needs to change, and you just go and do it. And then you don't overthink it. So the self-awareness, it grows and grows and grows. I remember at one point I had such an ego, and you don't even realize it's there. And then that sabotages everything anyway.
It's self-protective.
It
tries to survive.
And then you're defensive and all kinds of things. Then you search for the validation, you need to feed the ego, all of those kind of things. So being able to, I feel more peaceful. You know, I feel more peaceful that I'm not in the search, I don't need validation from others. I feel good, I'm content, I know who I am. So that's a good place to be.
That's actually a key area that I've realized for myself is more important than wealth, actually, to me, is calmness, like inner calmness. Because I feel like if you have your health on point and you have an inner calm, you can be a lot more patient with your growth to wealth.
Of course,
you know? If you figure out ways to stay calm, and actually then being at your job, you know, that you hate, so to say, if you learn how to stay calm and really relax within, it's not a bad place, actually. You're not dying at your job, you know.
Exactly.
If you know how to relax and say, okay, it's not only 5 years of struggle, it's actually 5 years of good life until I can leave this job.
And what you said earlier about almost preferring a walk in the park rather than with the beers with the friends, sometimes you have to pay yourself first. In that sense, you're paying yourself first by going and taking that for your own mental health, for your own health, right? For having that mentality to say, no, this is what I'm going to do because I'm going to take care of myself first.
Yeah.
I think that's so important to get to that stage where, and you actually feel good about it. You know, how many people do you know, or you may have even experienced this yourself, where people don't like being alone. They can't
Fear
go.
isolation.
They can't go to the park on their own without being on their phone or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Isolation I think it's a competence to learn, especially in because the easiest thing. What happens in isolation? If you really put your phone away, you start asking yourself the questions that you've been avoiding. You know, like if there's a difficult topic on your mind, the best place to go is Instagram, because there is something that gives you, you know, emotional feedback.
Yeah, of course.
And you don't have to ask yourself like, what I've been, you know, why don't I enjoy my life right now? But I believe I actually utilize that individuation, you know, becoming more and more an individuum, like, it helps to accept that you are a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
You know?
We're all a bit crazy, guys and girls.
Yeah, and the more you accept that individuality and saying, you know, like I don't have to obey to the societal standard of going out for beers. I can do that if I really want it, if I'm inspired to do it. But what if I went for a walk in the park today? I would be called crazy. But maybe I am, and maybe that's the best thing about me. And actually, the more I find, the more one accepts and tolerates and loves this part about themselves. First of all, they get the benefits of self-awareness,
Yes.
which is huge. And later on, I speak from experience, you start to attract people into your life that actually find you attractive for going to the park by yourself.
Of course.
And to have a girl on your side that loves you for saying, hey, I need some time for myself. What could be better?
Exactly. And I think people need that, right? Because like you said, you reach a certain level of contentness where you can just spend time by yourself. It sounds so simple, even just looking out the window and just admiring the nature, anything, whatever it may be, just being acceptance in that moment. And then have people around you, like you said, if you've got a partner that understands that, right, Rick needs 2 hours by himself every day. Yeah. That's no offense. Yeah. That's no that, you don't want to spend time with me or things like that. That's just your time that you need to recharge, stabilize, and focus on what's important to you. Yeah. And I think not enough people do that. They don't pay themselves by taking care of themselves.
It's a risk to take. I think in the beginning it's a risk to take because you realize that if I start deviating and doing something different and what really speaks to my heart, the consequences are going to be there. There's going to be effect of that, and I hope to foster with that conversation in our community here that this is okay. Like go through the pain of individuation, isolate, go walk by yourself, put your phone away, and really confront yourself with the questions that are painful to ask, because the benefits in due time are guaranteed to make your life more relaxed, more easy, because you start to create an environment that actually refeeds that act of self-awareness. By now, I'm a little bit too much surrounded by people that are really self-aware, really reflected, because we can't really go for easy beers and conversation about, you know, like simple topics of life. Yeah. Because it always, after 5 minutes, drifts into the deepest topic that you can ever think of, like deep psychological, analyzing your childhood conversations. Yeah. And you're like, I just needed a break. So, but that's a really good problem to have. Yeah, of course. I think.
And I think that's really key. What you've touched on is the fact that asking good questions, asking the right questions. I think every trader should do that, right? Even just from a bit of context with people in the Falcon community. What would you recommend that they would do? Is just start asking these tough questions so they can stay in their own lane?
What would I recommend? To stay in your own lane, or actually creating that own lane, right?
Yeah.
It's a good question. I would begin with really simple ones, you know, like start the W questions. What am I doing here? Why am I doing this? Like this purpose question. Why? And going down to the root of the problem, if let's create a little scenario to make this understandable. Let's say someone has a problem with trading, like they're not enjoying analyzing the charts, and they're sitting there. Well, that was me actually. Let's do it with myself. Yeah. I sat there and I analyzed and I didn't enjoy at all. I started to ask, like instead of ignoring the problem, forcing myself through or avoiding it and just going to the pub with friends, I started saying, okay, stop analyzing, sit down, relax. Why don't you enjoy it? Because I'm not profitable. Why are you not profitable? You know, you can go down this scenario of asking your questions, and then why are you not profitable? Because I didn't focus on my work. Why didn't you focus on your work? Well, because I have some health issues that are distracting me. Why do you have that? And so on. And then you start to be like, okay, actually to become a better trader, by analyzing the charts better, I need to confront the problem of my neck pain, which is something I had for like 3, 4, 5 years. So to stop and think and ask yourself the right questions, I think is the best thing one can learn to do. To build that competence of asking yourself the right question, because you don't have to read every book on psychology then. You know, like the books can always provide you with all the information that humankind has ever created. But if that information is nearly irrelevant right now, and what is relevant is you sitting down actually defining the question,
of course,
can save you a lot of time and energy. So I would say the competence of asking the right questions is started with W questions, very simple, and isolation, a mix of these two.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good blend.
Have you done this before? Like, have you done these sessions? You're a friend of reflection.
100%. And I ask myself why all the time. You know, I had this with materialistic possessions like supercars and things like that. And then when I asked myself the real why, you don't want it. And then you start to realize it was like a childhood goal to tick off, very impulsive, tick it off. And then when you really get down to it, do I use it? No. Why am I not using it? Because it's not that practical. Why is it not practical? You start asking, like you're just saying, you go down and down and down.
Have you had that with a McLaren?
Yeah.
You bought the McLaren and then you had to sit down and ask yourself.
100%.
Wow.
And again, that's when you become content with yourself. That I get excited. I've said this to people before. That I get excited over for something so simple like a coffee machine, like a new coffee machine. Because the reason as to why is because I'm thinking about, well, now I've got this new coffee machine. I'm excited for that, for my morning routine. I'm having a coffee on the charts because I'm thinking about everything of my routine as a side effect of becoming a better person, better trader. So then you start to get excited about these simple things that don't really have much monetary value attachment to them, because anyone can buy a coffee machine, right? But it's the process of what that gives me. I get more I get more satisfaction from it. And when you don't have anything, right, if you can't obtain something like a supercar or something, you feel like that's all that you want.
Well, I think it's because it's a symbol of having reached all the other goals you should have been confronting, right? Like if you would have given me a supercar or free me from neck pain 3 years ago, definitely neck pain. But I ignored the neck pain for long enough to start telling myself, maybe if I have a supercar, maybe all my other problems are gone. Sure, because you won't achieve the supercar before you confront all the other problems. But that's fascinating. I think I would like to put some focus on this because you just said this, that after you bought the supercar, you actually realized through the experience, it's not really that practical.
No.
I think it's important to underline this because it's the euphoria from a coffee machine or from understanding something new that you've been ignoring for long enough can be much bigger than a super.
100%. And then you start to value things that are not always superficial, right? And then you can become a more content person, because you have to face yourself behind closed doors. You have to be able to face yourself in the mirror and say, does this supercar, does this watch, whatever it is, does this make me happy? Oh no, it's just a symbol of something. But if you can, I was speaking to one of my friends, Jimmy, about this, Jimmy who spoke at the conference, Jimmy Noreen, and he was saying, when he shaved his head, right? So he used to party and spend loads of money and things like that. And then he said that, well, when you're fully naked, in that sense that he shaved his head and he sold all of his cars, his everything, and he was just on himself, and he felt happy for the first time. Like the monk who sold his Ferrari, right? Yeah. Same sort of concept, that you realize true contentness is when you don't search for validation, you don't need others, you don't need to show someone something to say, yeah, I'm a big man sort of thing. You can kind of just be like, yeah, I'm happy. And then you get excited over the little things.
There's this beautiful quote that says, all man's or people's problems come from our inability to sit in an empty room alone for 2 hours. You know, that compensation, that you have to buy something, you have to prove yourself. Mm-hmm. There is nothing wrong with having a supercar. It's a nice car.
Of course, it's
a beautiful designed object. It drives fast, it gives you acceleration. Mm-hmm. But if you have that car and you're not able to be in a very simple area, mm-hmm. like very minimalistic area, and sit there and there is no one watching you and it's just you and your mind, mm-hmm. I think reaching that point while being calm and enjoying mm-hmm. yourself and feeling good, there's nothing better than this, mm-hmm. right?
100%, and then you just feel more content, and then your trading improves. So you hit the #1 goal in the first place of wanting to become a consistent trader by actually understanding those things. But sometimes it goes in a big roundabout circle. And guys and girls, before we finish up, just one thing to kind of finish up on this sort of topic. You know, from your experience now, and this, I think this could help a lot of traders. What's your next step?
My next step. You just put a finger in the wound, I guess. Yeah. Because I should have clarity about my next step. I have built myself a situation where I can focus another 3 months. Mm-hmm. So I said the entire year free. Mm-hmm. I don't have to work. Mm-hmm. So I can actually just focus on trading. I've been focusing on my health more and more.
Good.
I just came back from Prague where I read 5 books, mm-hmm. In a row, because mm-hmm. The topic was about hermetic principles of life, mm-hmm. was interesting. And now I'm in this situation where I'm saying, like, nothing is more important than watching your trade recaps. So
appreciate that.
The next most valuable point and the next step for me is to get more information in. Mm-hmm. I've cleared the board. Mm-hmm. Now I'm hungry for more information, and from what I've been told, the trade recaps are a great source of information.
Yes.
That I can apply, experience, and turn into knowledge myself.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing your progression and this kind of journey that you're on. It's super inspiring to see, all of the questions that you're asking yourself. Absolutely love that. And guys and girls, one of the most important things, just speaking to you, Rick, of this conversation, is that what I really want you to take away from this is start asking the right questions. Because when you can start asking the right questions, you get to the root of all the things that you think that you're not dealing with. You're avoiding the elephant in the room in that sense. And when you can dig to that, you actually start focusing on things that you actually enjoy. You become a happier person. And at Falcon, that's the goal. We want to help you become a happier individual, because then you perform better and you achieve your goal as a trader. So, yeah.
I feel like I have an analogy because I spoke to Ibrahim earlier, and I feel like asking yourself the right questions and going to the root of problems mm-hmm. is like putting lotion over your life. Mm-hmm. You can take the hard route of reaching your egotistic mm-hmm. goals, or and it's going to take you 10, 15, 20 years, or you put lotion on your life by asking yourself the right questions, and actually it makes the entire journey easier, because maybe you don't have to manage that fund with $1 billion. Mm-hmm. Maybe that is just a compensation of ego problem that you've built up through your childhood.
Of course.
So maybe by solving that problem with a couple months of deep work, mm-hmm. you can boil it down to a problem that is more attainable, is going to make you more happy, and suits your personality much mm-hmm. better.
And you're more enjoyable in the whole process.
Yeah. That's what it's about. But yeah, lotion on your life.
Yeah, you had it. Lotion on your life, guys and girls. Honestly, I really appreciate all of you guys, watching the content. I really hope you've enjoyed this. A little bit of a different conversation from what we've had in the past on the YouTube channel, but absolutely love it. Guys and girls, have an incredible weekend. And again, Rick, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.